Hey Tasha, hope you're doing well. Good job on these sort of shape exercises. I know it can be hard switching it up a lot, and I don't know how much of it you've done before, but yeah, good job at it. I feel like you're on the right track, and good job at switching relays. Yeah, but before I get into actually the critique, I wanted to say I'm gonna ask Travis tomorrow, about the pausing the membership and everything. So hopefully I'll have an answer to you by tomorrow. If not, I'll text him and stuff. But and then also about the our next meeting. I was gonna text you this last or send you a message for this last Thursday, but it's actually my little sister's wedding was this last week, so had more stuff going on. But we can either do it next week, or if you end up pausing it, if we're able to pause it, it'll maybe we'll do it at the end of the month or something like that. So if you have a specific date, you can let me know. But otherwise, I can just send you a message or something when it'll work best. But okay, with all of that, I'm just gonna probably work over a few of these and then talk about some other ones. I feel like specifically for the figures, I feel like your shapes are really working here. Like they feel right to me. And I would basically say maybe just give yourself another 20 minutes to finish them, because especially with figure, I just think it takes a little bit longer than with the portrait to really get a full figure in. And so yeah, no, I think you're on the right track with these. I would say yeah, maybe just give it another 20 or 40 minutes on those. But with the heads, these are the ones I really want to work over and kind of talk about, I guess, two things. One, it could be called, or it could be called two things. One, this, what I'm going to draw over it, in some sense could be the next stage, the next like layer of accuracy. But it also, is just sort of the another layer of accuracy that I'd be going for. So with this, I want to talk about this principle that I got from Richard Schmid. So he talks about in Alla Prima this idea of starting with an accurate shape and then sort of working off of it as, basically what I would call an anchor. So it's to say that once you're at a point in the drawing that you feel like you're on the right track, you can go in and put in maybe the most obvious shape, or a shape that you feel like you can get really accurate, and then use that as an anchor to draw everything else off of, to measure off of. So in Richard Schmid's book, Alla Prima, you'll see a lot of times he'll start with just the shape. He might just start with just an eye like this and then work off every other shape off of it. I think if you haven't done that before, you don't have sort of a lot of drawing experience, it can be difficult to do. But I think it can prove a point that if you start with something really accurate, a lot of times you can figure out a lot of stuff off of it. And so let's say, this I was working on top of your drawing, and now I've established the shape of the eye. Now I kind of want to not hold too tightly to the other shapes that you've put down, but I want to really work off of this shape. So what that'll mean in this situation is moving up the nose a bit. Because if I look at a line here and maybe we look at this shape, I'd say it's going to be something more like here, the bottom of the nose. And I'm sort of looking at the squareness of this shape, of the jaw, of that sort of light shape, and I feel like it's getting too much, it's getting pulled too much down towards the chin, if that makes sense. So I would bring it back something more like this. And I'm looking at this shape right here, saying, oh, how much space is there between that, basically the top of the nostril and the bottom of that eye shadow. just working through, sort of going shape by shape. Again, you can always refer back to that eye socket shape. And after this, I'm kind of going to show you an example of just kind of me going through one to show you exactly how I guess, go about it. Find that ear shape. And in Richard Schmidt's book, he talks about, if I remember correctly, he says that a lot of times he looks for a geometric shape. And I think it is really helpful that a lot of times the most obvious shapes are ones that are really geometrical. So maybe even something like this, something where there's a pure straight or something that feels obvious to you. Because a lot of times it's just you start with something that you feel like you can get most accurate. And then a lot of times each of those, you find that puzzle piece, you get another puzzle piece that's a little bit easier. And eventually those can help you find and get more accurate those areas that are maybe more difficult or harder to get accurate, if that makes sense. And a lot of times, though, in a portrait, it doesn't end up being like an eye or a nose, like a facial feature, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And again, I want to go through drawing, a quick drawing, kind of show you how I would really do this. And to be able to demonstrate it, I think would help. But kind of just cleaning this up and adjusting it a bit. But you can see biggest change is really in that bottom third. But adjusting lots of things and really just trying to see those shapes as much as possible. And again, I think really drawing it through here might be the most helpful way to understand it. So I want to show you basically, let's say this is maybe something like a ballpoint pen sketch. And I'm going to do it in something like 5 or 10 minutes. I want to show you how I would sort of go about that and basically how I think it can be really helpful. And I would say definitely try this out. Maybe at this similar size on my iPad, it's probably like 1.5 inches or something. Like it's pretty small. So just drawing that general face shape. Find the ear here. Find that hair and hat. And knowing that these are pretty much ballpark measurements, meaning, just general. They're not going to be 100% accurate. Finding those shapes, something like that. You can find that line for the brow. put in basic nose, some simple light dark shapes. Put that one in too high. Working smaller like this too does help to see the shapes. So it's good to test yourself and do them bigger as well, but sometimes I think it can be helpful just to do it sort of this way to be able to just try to get it in sort of a simple, quick way and think about it in a way that makes sense. So that's kind of my quick block in. And then now maybe I'll go in and say, okay, I'm really going to establish one particular shape. So I think for this one, I'm going to try this left eye socket actually as our sort of anchor. And then the way I think about this a lot of times is sort of in layers. So it's to say that first layer, again, got me into the ballpark. This next layer, we're going to get more accurate. I've really got this one shape, and I'll try not to hold too much to this information, to all that first layer, but really just allow that to be just a guideline, the original guideline, and say, okay, try to look past it and really just use this shape right here, that more accurate shape I put down to be my guide. And again, if any of this doesn't make sense, just feel free to message me. And again, I'm looking at this sort of shape, trying to make sure I get that square feeling. And you can see from this shape I did here, it seems like this chin is going to be too long, so I'm going to have to bring up that information, and that's fine. I'm just kind of working piece by piece through this drawing. You can see that ear pretty far off in that first pass. Might break up this big halftone, just like I talked about, I think, last week. Sometimes it's just too big to see the shapes for me. And another thing from Richard Schmid, he would talk about that you can see the relationships between small shapes easier than we can between big shapes. So that's to say that we need to get those big shapes correct, but if you really want to get things super, super accurate, a lot of times you have to get down to those smaller shapes. I'm just going to fill this in here. A lot of times it's actually easier to see the shapes once you fill them in. Sometimes you'll see things you didn't necessarily see before. As you can see, I'll move the shapes around. Say, okay, well, maybe that eyebrow needs to be a little bit bigger, a little higher. I'd say pretty much it always takes some movement, some pushing things around to get them accurate. But you can see, this didn't take too long, and I think it can be a really helpful way of working. And the other way I would say is kind of doing it for even longer, so once you have that simple version of a drawing, like a 20-minute land, and maybe it's not as accurate as you want it to be, then maybe spend another 20-40 minutes kind of putting on this next layer of accuracy. So you can see it's not perfect, and it's not the prettiest drawing in the world, but I think that the shapes are pretty accurate, and that's really what I'm aiming for in this drawing. So again, I really hope it makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know. But I would say maybe try doing some small ones, kind of like this, just with a ballpoint pen, or you can do it with the charcoal or graphite or something, and see how they go for you. And then I would also say, try some ones that are maybe like start with a 20-minute and then go more accurate and takes like an hour or so. And if see if one works better for you. But this is what I would really say to aim for, is really try to let go of some of the other things and really grasp the shapes, and then eventually we'll try to put it all back together, and really use all the pieces to make something great. But I think I think this could really help your drawing. So with that, I just want to go over, let me see here. Go over this one here. Just to talk about some other things as well. Again, I like the simplicity. And there's some certain shapes as well that I feel like aren't what I'm seeing in the reference. So like if I squint down and look at this eye, I see it coming down more like this, making a shape something along these lines. And what I'm also looking at is this distance to this distance, right? So you can see it's pretty short. And if I look at it there, I think that's closer. And I'm also looking at sort of this shape. Something like that. And you can see, to me, it's thinner. And it gets a little sharper down here. I mean, it's more about the thinness. But something like that. And then with the shadow under the nose, I would probably aim for making it more. I guess accurate is the word, because it's great to design and to push some of the other pieces, but I would still, again, at this point, I would just say try to make it as much like that shape as you can, just at least for these exercises. And you can see I am definitely designing, but I'm, and it's hard because I'm glad that you're making it simple as well, but I guess I'd basically just put more information in there. I'll bring out the mustache a little bit more. That sort of thing. You can see that, not huge change, but to me it looks more like him, just even with that, bringing that down. And those are the things I'd really be looking for. And I would say again, try a bit of both to see what works for you, what helps you sort of study. And a lot of times, again, I like to do some kind of shorter drawings, and you can see I'm just gonna come back here and clean this up a little bit, but I think it can help a lot in sort of getting into that mindset of what are the shapes that I'm seeing, and also in some sense what makes her head look like her head. So, if it's, I think the back of someone's head is a great example that I heard from Morgan Weisling in a video, that he talked about, when you see the back of your friend's head, it's them, right? And why is that? It's most of the times because of the shape. So when someone sees that silhouette, they know the subtle way that somebody's, hair goes up and around like this, or somebody has, and the opposite, where it's really wide at the top and then it only comes out a tiny bit at the bottom, or they have a shaved head or whatever it is. But a lot of times it's that shape, and really pushing in and seeing that almost to some degree an exaggerated shape. So maybe making this a slightly more square rather than less square to push those shapes that you're seeing. So I know it's a lot about shapes, but again, I think this can help a lot. And yeah, just let me know if you have any questions.